Hey, everybody, welcome to the next edition of Founders Talk. Today, we have the pleasure to meet with or have a conversation with Niki Decker. Niki, one of the things that we say at Rally is that we want to be a hub for social entrepreneurs. So anyone who in the early stage who's trying to create sustainable businesses to do good work, we want them to be able to stop through Orlando. And so as part of that reason, or the reason that we say is because we got good people here, right? Good things, good people. You happen to be one of those people we want to be able to showcase. And so, not to put the pressure on you, but we are highlighting as one of the gems of the Orlando social entrepreneurship community and hub. Is that cool with you?
Excellent. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Perfect.
thank you.
I knew you were a little nervous coming into the conversation, but I believe that you have a wealth of stuff to offer. Before we move into the conversation, Niki, just tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll just dive into some of your experience at Tupperware, and then how that applies, you think, to social entrepreneurs. And then really, I'm interested in the question of what attracts you to social entrepreneurs too. But so yeah, go ahead and give us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Okay. Well, good morning, and I really am happy to be here and share my story. Go way back. So I was born in Florida, in St. Pete, one of those few Florida natives, and went to school and studied psychology because I was always fascinated by people and what makes them tick. And then after I got my undergrad, I wasn't sure what to do. And my grandma said, be an accountant, be a bookkeeper, you'll always have a job. And at that point, I was like, I had taken some business classes, and I thought, well, it's the safe thing to do. Why not? So I got my master's in accounting right after, and went to work for one of the big four in Florida doing auditing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with audit. It's about going to businesses and helping make sure that the financial statements are properly stated. But you're kind of automatically in a little bit of on edge. People can get on edge with you because you're there to say, are they doing things right? And so I found that I learned a lot from my psychology background in terms of how to relate to people, how to connect with people, and that really helped me a lot with my job.
Yeah.
After doing auditing, I was traveling around Florida. I had a friend, and her boyfriend was actually an auditor for Tupperware. Tupperware operates in over 45 countries. And so he's traveling to Australia and Japan and Paris, and I'm in Fort Myers and Tampa and Clearwater. And I thought, I'm going to go for it because I always wanted to see the world. And so I applied, had to actually apply about 3 times at Tupperware because they weren't ready for me. They were looking for someone with a little bit more experience. So I just kept at it. And finally, they said, sure, come on over. So I joined the internal audit group at Tupperware back in 2000. And it was fantastic. I got to see the world, still doing audits, but truly get to see the world. I think I went over 25 countries, and it was fantastic.
I don't know what's going on with my audio, but go ahead. I think I'm good. Go ahead. But I wanted to be really quickly. I just wanted to say that's amazing how encouraging your family is, or was. They said, "Hey, go into accounting," right? I feel like somewhere in my household growing up, they said, be a mechanic, you'll always have a job, right? Which is much different from being an accountant. So, Ben, did you hear something similar in your house?
Yeah, they told me I should do engineering, like to be an engineer, something with math, science.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need better parents, apparently.
Yeah, I was a philosophy major, so I didn't listen very well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the dream was always to have a doctor in the family, but I faint at the sight of blood, so that wasn't good.
Yeah.
Counting is second best, I guess.
So when you're at Tupperware, you were and just I just want to be able to track through the different points, because as I looked at your LinkedIn profile, it was like you were in auditing, And then you moved to, is that where you moved into investor relationship?
It was a little bit of a journey. So
Oh, okay.
audit, and
Okay.
then I moved into finance. So consolidating all the businesses from around the world so we could report them as a consolidated entity. So I did that for a few years. And then the great thing about Tupperware is they would allow you to move around. If you had a good track record and, supporters, then you raised your hand for something different. So I was always interested in strategy. So I moved into a strategy role at the lower level and had more interaction with the CEO and the CFO. And then at that point, I moved into investor relations. And which I learned a lot. And I think, there's a lot of, we can get into it later, but I think there's a lot of great learnings, especially for this group. It's about how to tell your story, how to connect with people that, want to invest in your business. It's really kind of a sales and marketing job along with financial, because, you have to be able to show them how you're profitable, how you're going to grow.
And then you moved over to, yeah, it sounds like, I don't know if it's not resonating through my microphone, Ben. I know you're pinging me about this. He's saying it's echo, but all right, there it goes. I think it's gone.
I don't hear it. Yeah.
Okay, then it must be all in Ben's head. That's what we'll say. So, and then you moved into a strategy role over at Tupperware. And so, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess it's always interesting to see what was it about. Do you think that there was like what were the things that resonated? It's trying to connect the dots through people's journeys, right? Like, was there an experience in your childhood that made you interested in audits, and was it really audits, or was it something else inside of the auditing process that was fascinating to you? And then what was that common denominator through all of those experiences that you found that was fascinating through you, spanning from auditor all the way through investor relationship, all the way to strategic strategies? Like, what do you think that was for you?
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought about that. The thing with audit was it's a great way to start. And it was kind of like a boot camp, because it taught, I had part-time jobs since I was 12, but this was actually like a job that taught you, the basics of how to operate in the corporate world. It wasn't the most fun job, but it was just a great start and launch to next things. But I think, reflecting now, I think the common thread has always just been about people and understanding people and being fascinated by them. I really enjoyed that about audit, is getting to meet different folks in different cultures around the world. The thing about strategy and what I loved was knowing that, me and my team, we were merely making a difference in the lives of mostly women around the world. And I don't know if I really understood that when I was in audit with the company, but once I moved to strategy and started meeting women, and we even did studies on women in Mexico and in Indonesia, and truly like joining Tupperware, having their own business, selling Tupperware, bringing, recruiting others, having their own teams, they made money. So they would literally move up socioeconomic levels, but they also gained self-confidence. They also gave back to their communities. And so being part of that and knowing that whatever I was doing was helping to support that just gave me so much satisfaction and really, helped me find that purpose in my job. So I think it's that human connection, that and the curiosity about people.
Yeah. Yeah, because I always say, go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, it's unique sometimes to find an accountant who's able to think strategically a lot. Sometimes your CFO or your money person is not the person you want taking strategic advice from, because they want everything to fit neatly. They're not sure where the right place to take a risk is, so they take no risk. Are there some ways when you were helping people build up those companies that where you saw which financial metrics were really important, when they were ready to take a risk? Is there some kind of indicators that you began to learn that would go across country or business that you were working with?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the size. So for this business, it was a couple things. One was how many people in their business were selling, and so how many, we called it activity, but what's that size of their team and that are actually selling, and are they helping people get more successful in the business, or are people finding it's just that they're coming on and they're not selling enough, it's not for them, and they're leaving. So really looking at the size of the team and that turnover rate was pretty important. And yeah, I think you're right. I think, and I think accountants tend to be more left brain. I used to always think in spreadsheets. And when I moved to more the strategy side, I would say I started to think in PowerPoints, because it's a lot about looking at the whole picture and not just, I mean, believe me, I love a checklist. I love things are black and white, but like life isn't black and white. And so balancing that gray and realizing, hey, if you only take the safe choice, you're leaving, that's a choice too. And so you're actually not doing things, you're making a decision to leave money on the table perhaps, or leave opportunity there. So it's not so black and white. And I think that's what I've learned on my journey. But some people you really have to help bring them along to see that.
So
well, I think go ahead, Kyle.
Oh no, I was just pulling back, and I was just around the original question is like the the common denominator, and one of the things I've always thought about was like, well, what attracted me to, like, I got my degree in science, right? What attracted me to that? And then people say, well, how do you use that nowadays? And I think that when I extrapolate and or pull back and I say all the experiences I had, like ultimately what it came down to was that I was always fascinated with systems and how systems work. So whether it was biological, which is science, and then I had opportunities to understand business, and I remember very frankly, or having not an internship, but being a part of a program that exposed me to different facets of the business. And I saw the business as an organism, and each component as some piece of that organism, the systems and how it needed to run and operate it. So it allowed me to see the micro picture, but then to pull back and see the macro and how the things should operate and work. And so when I think about you, and the reason why I asked that question, I think about you, is it's like, okay, through auditing, through investor relationships, through strategies, ultimately, and then you said this, it's like really it's about how do you tell a story, and what is that story? It's understanding what is that story and how to tell a story. And although auditing, it's like you're not necessarily telling, I mean, the person is telling a story, but you're trying to figure out the story of the person. So you're like, because it's like you're looking at their auditing, their trails or their work, their processes, and saying, okay, what's the story here, right? And so there's this fascination with being story and then telling the story. I do like the fact that you said about the PowerPoint presentation, because I do love PowerPoint presentations, and Ben often kind of nudges me a little bit about that. But I do love a good PowerPoint presentation.
He hasn't completed the thought until he's made a slide deck about it. Then he's got it all organized in his head now.
I'm a visual learner, that's why.
I can relate. Yeah.
But Ben, were you about to say something before I broke in?
No, I just wanted to. I love that you think in slide decks.
Oh.
Yes. You can ask Jennifer how many slide decks we've done, and not only how many, but how many, we'd be up to like version like 35,
Yeah. I mean, slide decks are fascinating.
The one thing I was thinking about with the accounting and then the working with the people, consolidating the businesses, and then moving to strategy, is that I think a lot of times early stage entrepreneurs are intimidated, is too strong a word, but kind of like downplay sometimes the black and white nature and the importance of that as an indicator. And so I think that like you play an important role in a rally program, but in general for entrepreneurs to find someone like you who's willing to mentor, who recognizes that the spreadsheet isn't the beginning and the end, but it is an important component in the overall strategy. And if we ignore the black and white numbers because we're uncomfortable with it, it's not our favorite thing, or we don't think it's the most important, it can be a silent killer that comes back and we're like, we're selling, but why are we not making any money? And a good idea is runs aground because we don't have that kind of thinking. And it's cool. It's just not easy to find that always. To find an analytical CFO that can handle strategy. And so I like the conversation of trying to figure out where it is, because entrepreneurs need that kind of mentorship. So maybe it's in the storytelling or the deck building.
Or in the spreadsheet.
Or in the spreadsheet.
Neither do you like to build, Ben, since you want to.
Nope. I tell some stories until someone else builds it. That's
man, you're a great storyteller. I agree with that. So Niki, like, so then ultimately you landed at Rally. Well, this is not your only landing point, but you came aboard with Rally, and as I listened to your story, like, I can understand why you ended up here, right? But can you tell us kind of what was attractive to you, or attracting, what about Rally was attracting? And this is not a shameless plug for us to tell us how great we are, but there was something about Rally that you liked, and what was that?
Sure. I mean, it's the purpose piece. So, you know, the whole idea of social entrepreneurship, and like I said, I thought of Tupperware as that, and we were always trying to tell that story. And I think it's still a work in progress to help people not just think product, but just think about also this earning opportunity for women around the world, especially in emerging markets, and how that can change their life. And then, you know, this idea that there's other businesses that have that similar, you can still do good and make a profit. It's not just being a nonprofit. I love that. And so being, you know, and I left Tupperware in April. And so now I have more time. And I wanted to do something where I could be part of making the world better and share. I mean, I've learned a lot of lessons, made a lot of mistakes. So just to be able to be that, to be connected still and have challenges and have things to think about. And, you know, if I can share any of my wisdom, or people can learn from my different experiences, that's really why I wanted to do this, just to still be involved and mentor. And it's been great. I mean, the variety of businesses in this year's cohort is fantastic, and, you know, so different, but it is all about making things better, making the world better. And, you know, I think the world's finally waking up to that. I was reading a study yesterday, and it was saying, you know, investors, there's this whole thing about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. It's really hot right now for all kinds of companies, you know, even those that aren't social entrepreneurs. But it was also saying that private equity is starting to care now, and for a couple of reasons. One, they did this study, and it said that companies that have a strong ESG component actually outperformed those that don't by almost 40% in this one study. So, you know, they care about that. And then also consumers, we know millennials and Gen Z, they want to spend their money with companies that are doing good. And so there's a lot there that's really rich right now, and really it's a great time. So to be able to help you know, social entrepreneurs take advantage of that and move to the next step.
What really quickly, is there ESG and CSR? Are those synonymous or different?
Good question. I think they're related for sure. ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So it's looking at companies that are doing good things. And it used to be, I think in the past, sustainability, like they would always do companies would have to do a sustainability report, and it would talk about, you know, how they were using their natural resources and supply chain and things like that. But it's really expanded a lot more now into looking at certainly the environment and their impact on the environment, also looking at their human relations practices, their board compositions, looking at racial and gender, you know, makeup, and making sure there's more in terms of that sense. How they run things, and looking at pay. So I think that's broader. And then corporate social responsibility, I think is, I think they're related, but I guess it's that permanent that's focused on that as well as giving back.
Yeah. So look, you're up there doing things at a well-run company with lots of resources. Then you slide over to us, and you're now working with companies that are doing good things, but with very limited resources.
Yes.
I'm sure there is a transition, right? Like when you think about all the knowledge and wisdom in your head, and the things you learn, how do you make it? I want to talk about some of those things, but before we do, is like, how do you? Was there a process, or have you learned something about how you translate it to an organization that is with limited resources or have smaller resources than what you're used to working with?
Yeah. Well, it's been so interesting, like, and even we're trying to do the surveys, right, to understand the customers, and you're like, yeah, you just put it together, and you just find some groups and go after it, and you basically you be scrappy and then figure it out. And I love that. Like, I love just, it's one thing, it's nice to have the resources, but then it's a lot of meetings and talking and just to be able to go and like, okay, go, and if it doesn't work, pivot, and why not? Like that's so energizing. So I love that, and what I also love is that you guys I like frameworks. I think you know that about me. So it's not just freewheeling. I mean, there's actually a system and a process. You get to have a lot of flexibility and to try to figure out what that means and how you're going to execute it. But knowing that there is like a process to help guide you, I think is really important, because otherwise you can just, I know I've done this, I've seen other people, you can like spin and get lost and, stuck on something, and you're not making progress.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about like the wisdom that you have in your head. And I want to, like, I'm sure there's a few nuggets, but then I want to spend some time on each nugget. And so when you think about, the stuff that's in your head, and if you're sitting in front of social entrepreneurs at the early stage, what would be? Could you give us 2, 3, however many you prepare? What would be the first nugget of wisdom that you would give to them, and then expand on that?
Sure. In working with and getting to having the privilege of meeting a lot of entrepreneurs in my time, I think that there's a couple things that stood out that a lot of them had in common. I mean, one, no doubt about it, they were passionate about the brand and the product. I mean, passionate to the point where we'd have big sales meetings, and they would show new products, and these women, not young, always would literally be standing on the chairs in the auditorium just screaming. And that was the passion. It was real. And that comes through, and so whenever you're with people, whatever you're talking about your business, I think, and I know that probably comes naturally, but thinking about making sure, don't hold that back. Let that passion come through, because it's real and people pick up on that. The other thing,
that is like, we talk about that some, especially at the beginning of the program, and it happens in cause-based work a lot, where we take for granted that people know what we're talking about, agree that it's a problem, have the same degree of exposure to it that we do, that they've talked about it as much as we have. And we forget that people are living their own lives and have lots going on, and very little of it involves us or our problem or product. So having a simple, compelling way to communicate your passion is like so important. I think for any entrepreneur, it's really important, but I think especially for social entrepreneurs, having a really simple way to say, here's the thing I care about, here's why it's a problem, here's how I want to solve it, so that we can capture that passion and emotion. It's interesting that you saw that. Are there individuals that stick in your mind that you remember, oh, this one was particularly passionate, when you worked with them at Tupperware?
Yeah, there was I got to travel a lot, as I mentioned. So I remember meeting this woman that ran a business in Indonesia, and so really, not a rich country, didn't have much, but was able to build this business through hard work, through being passionate, committed, flexible and adaptable. I mean, we would, things would change, and it was just it's not necessarily the easiest country to live in if you don't have a lot of money, and so she was just able to overcome a lot of challenges and grow, and the pride that she had in her business. But she also, the other thing I saw a lot of times was this whole mentorship. So even she was always helping those, that were part of her business that were just joining, didn't have as much, didn't know. Like you could see that, even going to visit her distributorship where she had all this pride, but she was still mentoring and helping, and that never went away. And so that made a mark with me, because even if once you make it, that doesn't mean you're done, and to see a lot of women, it was just part of the culture.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it makes an imprint on you. I was thinking about there's this Mediterranean place I used to go to that the guy was so excited about his hummus that I was sure his hummus was the best in the city, but it was only because he was so sure it was the best hummus in the city. I don't know if it actually was or
Was it
not.
the same as Publix?
No, man, it was like some he made, right? But like he was sure. He was like so, and I had the same thing. Like when I started Credo Coffee, I had just come back from meeting the growers in Guatemala, and I was letting people name their price, and I was making the coffee wrong. Like I had never worked in a coffee shop, but I had people coming back because we got into good conversations, and they like what they were exposed to, and we were able to build friendships. And I think so often, whether we're in fashion or composting or nonprofit development, keeping a strong passion around the problem that we're solving and the product that we're building is really important. And we need little handholds, ways to do that, whether that's your UVP or that here's the problem, or here's my issue, here's the problem, here's my solution. Whatever it is, a simple way to communicate that. I appreciate you bringing that out, Niki. I think that's really important.
Yeah, we find that that the whole part of the passion is expressed through the belief statement. It's like, okay, well, what is it that I believe? And here we coach. We say we recommend or encourage them the fellows to say, don't drop that belief statement on the ground. Get it up front, because it's something that you care about, and it is a competitive advantage of yours. But sometimes, and I know this through my own experience, is that can be challenging, because to start a conversation off that way, tell you, like, let me tell you what I care about first, can make one feel a little bit vulnerable, right? Because you're like, man, does the person really want to hear this? But it's your
good. Vulnerability is good, Kyle.
What? Say that again.
Vulnerability is good, man.
I'm learning that slowly. But yeah, like you're absolutely right, Niki. Like the whole passion thing is important in holding that. But I was just making a note that part of it comes out in those statements, and that's why we ask our fellows to say what you believe, put it out there up front. And we also recognize that it is a hard thing to consistently do, because we're in a world where people like, just get to the point. And to say what you believe and what you care about is not necessarily getting to the point. It's first anchoring the thing that you're doing into something that is very personal to you, right? And that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what, okay, so passion, wear it up front. Don't lose that. If you need to stand in chairs, scream. The second one is Charlie. So for you, don't butt in, but for you that means like you're standing on buckets, compost piles. I think you should do that campaign around that, Charlie. We'll talk about that Thursday. But so the second thing is what would be the second piece of, you know, philosophical, tactical, practical wisdom that you would give?
Yeah, well, I think it ties into what Ben was saying. And you were saying, you know, relationships matter. And I think a big reason that, you know, I've been successful is I've been able to form relationships, you know, at work, and you build your brand. And so people know that, you know, I'm honest, you know, and you do that by your actions. You can tell people all day long, but it's really what you do. So, you know, do what you say you're going to do. I mean, it was a big wake up call for me when I realized that people don't always they say they're going to do something and they don't always follow through. And I would always be shocked. I mean, I'm less shocked now, but it's like, but you said you were going to do it. And you don't even acknowledge like, hey, I dropped the ball. Like, just didn't do it, just not following through. And so don't do that. You know, if you say you're going to do something, do it. If you screw up, just admit it and make a correction. Nobody's perfect. You give feedback to somebody, like give it to them to their face directly. And if you have to report it up, you know, sometimes a big part of what I did was going to different businesses around the world and working with them and helping them figure out, hey, what was working, but really what wasn't working. And then being able to, you know, bring that back, if you will, to corporate. And so people wouldn't open up with me. I mean, same in audit. Like if they didn't trust me and know I was going to be fair and present their case or explain how things work in a, you know, fair and balanced way. And so, you know, a lot of it's just
like
stuff, you know, growing up. But yeah, it's amazing how many people don't follow through, don't do that.
I like how you said fair and balanced. Who uses that term?
I did not mean to use that term.
That's okay. I mean, we got people who listen to Fox. I mean, that's good. Yeah, like I remember having that realization too, Nikki, like that people didn't always do what they said they were going to do. And it was very, I remember being frustrated. And so when you talk about that makes sense, right? Like social entrepreneurs, especially at the early stage, they need people's help, right? Part of the gauge on whether or not I want to give energy to something as a mentor or as a coach is how people work, right? Like, are they listening? How coachable are they, and are they executing? They don't necessarily always have to execute on what I say, right? Because it's just an opinion, right? But are they just executing? Are they trying to get better and executing? And part of that execution is those little things like following through, listening, all kinds of things. And so, yes, I 100% agree with you on that component.
Nearly everything an early stage entrepreneur has to do goes easier if they're good at making friends. I mean, sales, strategic partnerships, investments, strategic hires, nearly everything an early stage entrepreneur has to do goes better if they're good at making friends. And I'm amazed at how many people don't know how to make friends. Like, it's a soft skill that especially if you want to start something, you need to learn how to do, and you can learn how to do it. Like, there are classic books on how to make friends, and it's
how to make friends. Ben, give us the 30-second.
I mean, you let people talk about themselves. Don't talk about yourself all the time. Be interested in what they want rather than what you want. And then look for places to work together rather than just sell something to them. So look for ways you can plus what they want rather than just take what you want from them. Those are the 3 simple starts. And then
straight from Ben Horier's mouth. Thank you, sir.
That's great.
What will be your 3, Nikki?
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I had a CEO that he always said people like working with people they like. and it, it doesn't cost you anything. Don't be a blank, I mean,
Right.
just, yeah, and be interested in people, be a good listener, think about how you can help others, and don't just make it about yourself, think about the, why should they care, and what's the whole with them, what's in it for them. I mean, if you put yourself in other people's heads, I think it just, you see their point of view. You don't always have to agree, of course, but yeah, but yeah, it is a skill for sure.
So let's pull back through this. Be passionate,
Yeah.
execute well. Somehow making friends became a part of that. What's another? Yeah, give us another one. Niki?
Yeah, I've got two more. So
Okay.
one, I mentioned frameworks, but think about strategy versus tactics. And I think big business, small business, whatever, you constantly have to be thinking about that, and also assessing it, reassessing it, because things change, and you learn things, and things don't go well, or there's a new competitor, or the landscape changes, there's a global pandemic, whatever. So I think figuring out, and what's your strategy, and I kind of think about it as well. The big things are going to help you to get your vision, which your vision's pretty stable, your passion, but what's your strategy to achieve that? And then the tactics are all those little things, those little actions that you need to take, those steps to take to achieve the strategy. Like I said, I love checking things off a list, and I think one caveat is don't get too caught up in the tactics sometimes, just to do things to check them off if they're not really moving you forward. So you got to look at what you're doing, where you're spending your time, and make sure you're getting those bigger things done. A couple of the frameworks, I guess, that we use, the whole where to play and how to win. So the where to play, your products, your geographies, who you're going to sell to, but it's also what you're not going to play in is just as important, because you can't be everything to all people and do it all well. And I think that's not so easy, because you just think, oh, more and more and more is better, but it really is about deciding where you're not going to play, and really focus your efforts. And then the how to win. So like, what's your unique value proposition? What's your competitive advantage? What is your competition doing? And how do you compare to that? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? Where are those gaps? And then what are you going to do about them? And in what order? Because again, you have to prioritize relentlessly, especially when you're small and starting out and you don't have a lot of resources. Your time and your effort is a lot of resource. So prioritizing and figuring out what's going to give me the most movement in towards of achieving what I'm trying to get to.
That's so this one really resonates with me, because that is with entrepreneurs, is that they can get caught up in the weeds, right, in the hustle, where they never, because they're constantly just trying to like fix this, solve this, fix this, whatever, and they never really pull back and say, okay, well, where am I trying to go with all of this, right? I'm not sure if it's because they just don't give themselves enough time. I'm not sure it's just because it's just culturally, that's just how it's just like said, hustle. But in order to plan and understand where you're going, you have to like pull back and pause for a second and ask yourself that question, and then build to get there. And so one of the things that we like really try to get them to do is, as you talked about, it's like, okay, well, what is the vision, right, of your organization? And what is it you're trying to accomplish, the mission, right? And then from there, because on our lean canvas, we start with those two questions, mission, vision, impact, right? Because that's the bigger stuff, and then all the stuff underlying is the things that you have to do in order to get there, right? Key is, as you talked about, in terms of understanding that you can't play in all places. Like that's like saying like, okay, like that's why your customer discovery becomes important. and staying disciplined on that. If you get outliers, great, but to understand clearly who your customers is where if you spend time and money there, it will be the best use of your time and money and anything else that comes out of it. And so I think that that's a very important message for early stage entrepreneurs to understand is like understanding that there is a difference between tactics and strategy, and that we oftentimes focus on tactics because it feels like things that we can execute now and it feels good. But the bigger thing and the consistent message we've heard across these conversations with other people like yourself is like, don't forget about the strategy component of this. Like, it's important to pull back and build that and work towards that. Ben, you got any thing you want to add on that?
No, I was just thinking about how I was trying to sort out in my head. It does seem like it's hard sometimes for people to separate or catch when they're letting their tactics drive their strategy. And that happens, right? Where we see a job to do and we'd rather do the job than think deeply about why that job needs to be done or whether it needs to be done. Yeah. Did you stumble on any tools? You talked about the where to play and how to win. Yeah. But is that the main tool you guys used in how to help people decipher when they were letting tactics get in front of them or something? Those two questions?
I think, using that and then having, regular times to stop and come together and kind of assess. One of the things that my team would do is go to a business unit who's running the day-to-day, the week-to-week, and they were fighting the fires, and they didn't often have time to stop and pull back, and we could come and we would help lead them through some discussions where that they could kind of pull out of the weeds and think about, why are we even doing this? And it's hard to do it just on your own. I mean, that was one of the benefits of my group. We could come in and help guide those conversations by just asking a lot of questions, seeing what's working and helping them think through, what do we want to prioritize, and then what can we stop doing because you don't have all the hours in the day. Just thinking about the drivers of your business and what's really important.
Yeah, the drivers. In my head, I'm like thinking about that social lean canvas and the importance of going through it in order. Mm-hmm. And if the entrepreneur is working on the financials or a sales model, but can't explain why they're selling to this person or who they're specifically selling to, they might have gotten out of order. They might be doing tactics instead of strategy, and being able to go through, here's my vision, here's the impact I want to have, here's the customer that's going to help me do that, here's their problem, here's what I'm trying to sell them. Now, why am I having trouble with this ad? Everything else is lined up. Why am I having trouble with this ad? Rather than just tweaking the ad randomly, trying to figure out what will work or something.
Or doing just financials based on a bad business model, right? Like, you can be doing financials on a customer that's not even yours, it's an outlier, and it's not scalable. And then when your financials don't arrive at where they're supposed to arrive to, you're like shocked, like, well, what happened? Well, it's because you built financials around a customer that wasn't even yours, that was an outlier. You got it once or twice. It doesn't mean that they were your customer. You just got lucky for some reason. Maybe they liked you. Maybe you smelled good that day. Like, who knows, right? You made friends, right? But you don't build businesses. I mean, I get the whole make friends thing, right? But businesses ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to sell to people who are not your friends.
Yeah.
So, but I get it though. Niki, so you said there was one
passion
other one that you had.
Just the last one, and I think we've hit on it already, but the really about distilling your message. Distill. I have been in so many meetings and discussions with people, and there's just a natural, I think, human nature. You just want to tell everybody everything and show them how well thought through it is and how well researched and maybe how smart you are, whatever. Human brain, it's just too much. And there was one of my colleagues who particularly had a challenge with this, and I would walk away feeling like she had just shot a fire hose at me, and it was just so much, and I would just stop listening. And it really hurt her. And so it's not easy. It's really not easy. But some of the tips, for me, I would think about, what are the 3 things I want someone to remember when this conversation's over? And really, if you can get really clear on that yourself, and again, PowerPoints help me, or making outlines, before big meetings, to say, what are those 3 things, and make sure you're really nailing those. Setting the stage. And you guys said this before, but like, before you go into a meeting, I would go in meetings with the CEO. I would be preparing like all week for that meeting. For him, it was 1 to 10 meetings he was having that day. And so we'd sit down, and I just, if I just launched right into whatever it was, I could tell it would take him sometimes a few minutes, like, why are we here? And a lot of times he would say, like, we're gathered here today. And it was kind of like a cue to say, hey, you need to set that stage. So, hey, we're here because, this, and this. And I think for you guys, you're having these meetings, you're trying to tell your story. I think that's really important. Talk about why you're there, why it's important, why you care. I think that all makes a lot of sense. And then just watch body language. If people are not really looking at you, looking around, not looking at the deck, whatever, you got to pivot. And this is whether you're talking to potential investors, to, your teams, to customers, don't just stick to the script. I mean, you have to be human and adapt and make sure your message is getting across.
So that's really, so what you're saying, that this one, I mean, everything you're saying resonates with me, but this one, it really resonates with me because, so I've been accused at some points of being like kind of a stickler and just having like certain things, right? Like certain process and procedures. Specifically with these fellows, one of the things that I understand is that they oftentimes talk like a fire hose, right? And so me setting up these boundaries around them forces them to say, look, I know you got a fire hose, but you got to get water through this one little point here. And so what I'm doing is consciously trying to force them to clarify and focus their message, right, in a way that makes sense. So for example, the value proposition, right, is one of the ways that happens. Limiting the amount of time that they have to talk about something, to say, hey, on this slide deck, you only need to talk about this, right? Because like you're right, like you can have a slide deck and it can have 15 different concepts rolling on the same slide deck, and you're like, but that's not good, right? Because like the audience, it just becomes overwhelming, right? And so I really agree with the work of refining, but that's not easy, right? Like it's not like, that's some of the hardest work, is to clarify something, but it's so important because once it's clarified, when you have that moment as an entrepreneur where you say what you do and people go, I get it, and they get it instantly like that, it's like the best thing in the world that happens, right? It's an intense joy because you spend a lot of time clarifying. So I've built products before where the description was like, well, we do this, da 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 da, and we do this, and this is how the pieces go, and blah blah blah, and you walk away, and the person's like, oh my god, like you said, like they just been hit with a fire hose, and it's because I was passionate about it, so I wanted to get it all out on the table, right. And then it takes like that discipline and focus to bring it down, and it feels counterintuitive because you feel like you're holding back, but it's the analogy I always give on this one is like, look, I don't go any restaurant that I go to, if they take and put a salad, an entree, dessert, and all that kind of stuff on the table, they're doing it wrong. That's just way too overwhelming. Like the best chefs in the world give it to you in pieces, and the key is Niki saying you got to be a good chef. You got to give people stuff in pieces that makes sense, right? Yeah,
and leave them wanting more. Let them ask, and then they're engaged if they're asking you questions, and you can, again, go down paths that they care about.
Exactly. So the appetizer wants you desiring more, right? I almost feel like at the early stages, like that's, if I think in chef's term, is that like that's what these entrepreneurs are doing. Like they're cooking up the appetizer, right, to get to the next step. And I always tell them this, like especially in their marketing, this is something that will probably resonate with you. Is like don't assume that you're going to get the full block of time with someone, right? So in the early stages, like assume like you get 10 seconds to get the next 20 seconds, to get the next 40 seconds, to get the next whatever. So if you think about how you're talking about stuff, it's like you're in it to win it, right? And whatever you say, it has to be enough, because you have to make the assumption that you're only gonna get 10 seconds. And so I gotta say whatever's powerful enough to get them to the next 10 seconds and then to the next. And I say, build your messaging like that when you talk to people, build your website like that. Like, think about each line incrementally. Does this line warrant them moving forward to the next section? If not, you got to recraft it, because you only get so much time.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any other practical wisdoms or things before I open it up?
No, I think that's it.
You gave us all of it, huh?
I think I did more than 3 though, so I didn't follow my advice.
Oh no, that's fine. Listen,
no, those
Niki,
those are right in the middle. It's you can tell that you've been working with founders at all different levels. I think of Tupperware as working with small proprietors and founders around the world. And the points that you pull out are really universal. That idea of holding your passion, of doing what you say you're going to do, those are really universal. And people would do well to be able to heed that, especially if they can do it without a strategy team like Niki coming in and stay on point. They'll be really good.
Senator Decker. You do like a senator of like Virginia, like you look very stately, Miss Decker. It's like, are you?
I have an interview later today, so.
Oh, you have a meeting today. Nice.
An interview, yeah.
I think you're gonna get the job. All right. Matter of fact, I know you are. All right, so let's open this up to the fellows. Fellows, one at a time. Let's not be a fire hose. What you got coming at, Niki? What do you want to ask Niki?
Hey, Niki.
Hey,
this was great. Thank you so much. You might have heard from last week, but at Moto, we're kind of taking a similar route to Tupperware and trying to sell our products via brand ambassadors. So I was curious, via your time traveling the world with Tupperware, what do you think that Tupperware did best to set up the business owners for success? And then also maybe if there was a really interesting way you ever saw a business owner selling Tupperware.
Yeah. I mean, I think the product, having a great product, but also having a great story and way to sell it. I mean, we knew a lot that the power of the demonstration. So, there's the product, but really showing somebody how to use it, demonstrate. I mean, obviously it was with food, a little different, but then it just brought it to life. And so if there's ways, and I love how you're crafting your story about, it's not just the piece of clothing, but it's how it helps the person that's wearing it feel and, live that best version of themselves and be, it just conjures up all these other emotions and feelings. And I think when you can tap into that and show how the clothing does that, and when people sell that's where it gets really, really powerful. And then of course the providing jobs in Uganda as well. So I think the people that did really well were the ones that could didn't stick to the script, but knew what they wanted to communicate in, but could make that connection with people. That it made it really personal and interesting, and and you're like, yeah, I need to have that. I need to spend that kind of money on this product because it's going to make my life better. That really seemed to resonate.
Cool, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we say that we're selling confidence, not clothing, for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right. What do we got next? Anybody? Abdullah? No.
Well, for a change, no, I don't have much, but I truly do appreciate, especially the values that you put forward. Truly believe in those, and I believe if you're sincere to your clients and the and the objective of making somebody's life better, business just happens. Followers are created. Word of mouth is a great asset in business. And I'm truly in agreement with you. It doesn't matter if it's a Tupperware kind of business that is, through ambassadors. I think every client, we have to look at every client as our ambassador, even though we don't have a same platform as Tupperware, because the end goal is for our clients to get us more clients, right? So yeah, it was a great talk. I paid attention to it. It resonated a lot, and thank you for wise words.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, the word of mouth and is huge, and especially I think in the space you're playing in. I mean, everybody's connected. Everybody seems like a lot of nonprofits. They talk, they know each other, and so if they have a great experience with your product. I mean, that's going to go huge in terms of getting repeat business or getting new customers. And I think you're right. I think you're right on that one. Sure.
And I just want to mention, to speak specifically about the JCC meeting tomorrow, it sounds like Ruben wants to be an ambassador and further the mission of O-Town Compost.
Yeah.
So I guess I should look at that relationship like, this is he's an ambassador for O-Town Compost, and then just kind of have faith that the business will follow afterward. I mean, how would you look at this relationship?
So I know Ruben. I was on the board. My kids went to school there, and for years, and I was on the board of the J in the past. Cool. And I know with Ruben, he really wants to make this kind of this town square idea, and a place where people come and the community comes. So I might suggest, reading some of, I think there's things on the website where he talks about that. That way you can understand what's important to him. And again, he's an ambassador. He knows a lot of folks. I think there's another JCC up in Maitland, that could be something that you could think about. Okay. It could be more than just the picking up of the food waste there, and how could it be more of this engagement and more of this town square and community. There's a lot of
these strategic meetings. What do you typically do? I mean, I just went on the JCC website and tried to familiarize myself with them, but do you suggest any other helpful tips?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I don't know if you could look on Facebook, because I know he posts, I think, on Facebook, and check out their Facebook page to see if, again, how he's talking about it, and see maybe there's things that they're already doing that could resonate. But yeah, I mean, do your research in advance, right? Check out for sure the website, social media.
And I think one of the things I love is like when you come into that, because if it's a sales conversation or an opportunity where he might be a customer, a lot of times they're expecting you to come in hard, like making the case. So if you've done the research and you can come in with a couple genuine questions where you get them started talking first, it opens up a lot of opportunity. It kind of is unexpected, and it starts that friendship process. So the best use of that research is to surface some genuine questions that you have, some common points of interest, where you can come in and say, oh man, I was reading and I just happened on this. Can you tell me some more about, or what is your goal with this? Or when did you add this thing? Or some way where you can get them started talking in the beginning of the meeting is like a really way to kind of break the ice and get it on a friendly place instead of a combative place.
Yeah, so true. And then you don't have to be, I mean, not saying you're gonna be nervous, but then it's like, it just helps break the ice, because then they start talking about, I mean, he's totally passionate about it. So you'll see that come through, and then you can find those links to connect and say, oh, I get that, or have you thought about this? Or maybe he has other ideas. But yeah, getting the other person talking and showing you've done a little bit of homework, and you took the time to care about what they care about, that goes a long way with sales, with networking, with making friends.
Okay, thank you.
I enjoy, Ben, you describing a sales conversation. Trying to get the sale is combat.
That's how it feels if you come in selling hard, man. They get their defense up. They're like, sure, you're trying to get something over on them. And
Yeah.
nobody is. Yeah,
I mean, but it's like, but that's a car salesman, right? Like, no, that's like when you don't really want to sell, but I would assume, Charlie, that they're like, there will be points where you know that they're genuinely interested in what you want, what you're selling, and so they want to. So it's not like they the resistance isn't there to like, oh, don't sell me anything. It's like, no, let me see what you have, and you have to be able to talk about what you have, right? But yeah, all right, cool. All right, well, any other questions? We're good to go.
Thank you, Niki. You're a pro.
Yeah, right.
All of your, I mean, your points were, I mean, you were right on point. I appreciate the time, you taking the time today.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and as I open this up, you know, we're just trying to be a hub of an international hub for social entrepreneurs, and I truly believe, based on everything that you've given us today, that you've helped us make that case, not only locally and nationally, but to the world. And so I appreciate you being here, and I wish you all the best wishes in terms of your interview today. Hopefully it's the thing you want to do, and if so, I'm pretty sure you'll get it. So I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, and thank you to you all. I mean, for doing what you're doing. I mean, it's, you know, and I know it's a lot of time and hard work, but it's all for the greater good. And so I'm so happy to be part of this, and thank you for all you're doing.